Oh, I guess we're going. All right. Hey, everybody. I am mostly Joe, the Kentucky Atheist. That's Azo. And today we got Eric from the channel Skeptics and Scoundrels to come talk to us. We'll kind of, mess around here a little bit and just talk about whatever until a few people have discovered that we switched and started at 1 today. But hi, Azo. How are you? And how's it going, Eric? I'm glad you accepted the invite.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm doing fine. It's actually, I'm on the West Coast, so it's morning still for me. It's 10 a.m. So been up for about an hour. I had a slight headache waking up this morning, but I got moving and now I'm feeling a little bit better. So yeah, looking forward to having a nice chat here.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Thanks for making me feel bad for the whole sleep until noon thing. Oh,
You know,
it's
the
10 a.m. here.
the funny thing is, so I've been on vacation from work for a few weeks, and this is actually I'm going back to work tomorrow. So it's actually a good thing I got up early today because I'm gonna have to start getting up early again tomorrow. So doing a day early will make tomorrow a little bit better. Will be less of a shock because I've been sleeping until like noon or 1, which is what is that 3-hour difference? So it's gonna be like 4 p.m. your time is when I wake up recently.
Yeah.
So yeah, gotta start pushing that schedule back into place so I can work effectively.
Well, my sister lives in Vegas, and she'll call me, and I'll be like, dude, it's 1 o'clock in the morning. Why are you calling this late? And
Yeah,
she's like, oh, it's not that late here.
it's
And
like
I'm
9
like,
p.m.
oh,
Yeah,
So it's all right. Yeah.
no.
yeah, yeah. That's actually my hometown, Las Vegas.
Oh,
Yeah. Mhm.
my sister, she moved down there a few years ago to open a Suboxone clinic, and
Oh, okay.
yeah, she does addiction medicine, and I mean, she seems to like it there or whatever. She's been there for quite some time now,
Mm.
but she lives like 5 minutes off the strip, and then her husband was working for Metro EMS. So,
Okay.
but what's cool about that is like he was getting tickets to all the ball games and backstage passes to all these crazy shows and stuff
Yeah.
because EMS has to be there for all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Get a little kind of like residual benefits for a job that you don't really expect. Yeah. I've,
Yeah,
I've
and
definitely experienced that.
he still
I
hated that job.
Yeah. I definitely remember having jobs like that where, like, for instance, when I lived in Las Vegas, I was a wedding videographer for a while. So went to all kinds of resorts and hotels. Every time I had to film a wedding and a reception, I would get a free plate at the reception uh, buffet or whatever. So yeah, I mean, every weekend I was having 2, 3 good meals a day from, like, catered food, and got to hang out on the strip. And then once the wedding was over and I was done, I was like all dressed up and I was on the strip and I was still fresh. And I was like, okay, let's go out and have some fun. And yeah, just it's interesting how some jobs will have little perks in there that you don't expect.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always good to take advantage of those because it's basically like, a free meal is free money basically. So it's good to take advantage of something like that.
Well, you kind of
Speaking of that,
disappointed me.
even
You said you're all dressed up. I thought you were going to say you went to the strip to witness for Jehovah. Wow.
That's another thing too. Yeah, I
That
used to do
explains your apostasy, Eric. Show's
Yeah.
over, everybody. Thank you. Come on. See you next
Yeah.
week.
Actually, the funny thing is, like, I was born and raised in Vegas, but I didn't deconvert until I was living in Montana. I didn't deconvert until I left. I lived in Vegas, and then I lived in North Carolina for 3 years, and then I lived in Montana. And it wasn't until Montana when I deconverted, when I finally, because both Las Vegas and North Carolina, I was near friends and family who are
Support
also
system.
witnesses.
Right.
So we had that social reinforcement, that cult reinforcement was still always around me. And it wasn't until I went to Montana to kind of get away from, because I was like 26 and I was just, I couldn't quite put my finger on what was wrong in my life. So I just said, you know what, I'm going to move away for a while. I'm going to just get on my own, clear my head. And so, yeah, went to Montana. And that once I was there and that social reinforcement was gone, I turned into an atheist within 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's like I woke up. I was starting to think about things that I never thought about before because that reinforcement was gone. It was amazing how fast it worked.
Really?
And I didn't move there to deconvert. It just happened. Yeah.
So was your issues with the Borg itself, or was it the Bible, or a mixture of both? Because I mean, we've talked. I've got my JW background and did witnessing afterwards, so I find the JW insight, even of X's especially, insightful, and brings back flashbacks for myself. Except my hair wasn't as gorgeous as yours.
No, actually, so what happened was there was some personal drama in my life that it was more like failed expectations, because I was a ministerial servant. I was a regular pioneer. I was like, one elder put it, he was like, man, you've been like on fire like the past 2 years. And yeah, so I was just dumping my life into this, and I was expecting to be happier. I was expecting certain results, and that might have been unreasonable for me. Christian's going to point at that and go, "Oh, you were expecting things from God, or you're expecting things, rewards." And that could have been the case, could have not been, but a lot of stuff happened, and personal drama I don't want to get into, but it's what made me leave North Carolina. And when I left North Carolina, I was still a believer. I was very disillusioned. I was to the point where I was basically like, the cliche, I was angry at God. Because I was dealing with hypocrisy from elders in the congregation. I was dealing with hypocrisy from within my family. We had personal loss. There was a death in the congregation that kind of was the catalyst for this whole thing. And it was just a huge mess, and I didn't understand why. I was doing everything I could for Jehovah, and I was doing everything I could to preach the good news of the kingdom, and there was just all this complete terrible disaster was happening around me. So anyway, so when I left North Carolina, I wasn't actually operating like logically. I wasn't sitting there thinking, I got to question the Bible, or I got to question the history of the organization. It was more just disillusionment.
Okay.
And so when I left and I went to Montana, I like I said, I didn't leave with the expectation that I was going to leave, the truth. I was just going to try to just clear my head, get a fresh start, go to a new congregation. And yeah, at that point, because witnesses don't teach you philosophy, they don't teach you logic, you don't go to college, you're not supposed to go to college. So I didn't have any of the tools I needed to deconstruct my faith properly. So anyway, it was mostly just working off of intuition, mostly just working off of just feeling and emotion. And I was just every day was just a new step, and I didn't know where I was going. And it wasn't until I started questioning the very existence of God that I started actually doing like research into the whole thing. And that's when I discovered channels like the Atheist Experience. This is like in 2009. This is like a long time ago now, but 15 years ago now. So this is when I discovered like channels like the Atheist Experience, where I first got exposed to like Matt Dillahunty, Tracy Harris, Jeff D, Russell Glassier, all the old OG crew. Well, semi OG crew. There's even an older crew on the Atheist Experience. If you can like really dig deep and get some really old episodes. Yeah, you're like, I don't recognize any of these guys.
14 years ago, Matt was still part of it back then. That's what amazes me.
Yeah. So anyway, that's when I started listening to Atheist YouTube, and that's when I started learning things like philosophy, logic, the actual history of the Bible, like the actual history of the New Testament, what scholars do or do not consensus on certain topics, like who wrote the Gospels and where were they written, what language were they written in, the fact that Matthew and Luke are essentially plagiarizing Mark, like stuff like that. And it wasn't until after I deconverted that I started learning these things, and then that I kind of retroactively looked back and deconstructed at that point, going, okay, I see where the witnesses have it wrong when it comes to interpretation of the Bible, or it comes to like just knowledge of Bible history. And so, yeah, at that point, I started like kind of retroactively deconstructing after my deconversion. And then that kind of more fortified my atheism, I guess, is maybe a weird way to put it. Like, I realized I made the right choice when started hearing, I started learning, about the arguments for and against God, things like divine hiddenness, the problem of evil, the problems with like the ontological argument and the teleological argument, and also the Kalam cosmological argument. Started learning the problems with that. Anyway, so after several years, now I'm like, okay, I'm now my brain's now caught up to where my heart is. And yeah, so that was, that was a process started 15 years ago. And yeah, many years went by and I was just perfectly content with just consuming atheist and skeptic content on YouTube. And then about a year ago, I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to start my own channel.
Right.
So I did that, and now here I am.
That's quite similar to my story, only I wasn't a JW. But so one of the things that stuck out to me there is that you said whenever you started learning about the real history of the Bible and learning about the Bible and things, and I don't know if this is something that is widespread or if it's just my area, but whenever I talk to JWs in my area, it's always, we know the Bible best.
Yeah.
And we're you come hang out with us and we'll teach you the Bible. And I almost actually took up observing some of their Bible studies, not really taking part, but sitting and observing, because I was like, maybe they do know something here. And
the problem with that is it's not really a Bible study; it's a book study, is what it is, with the Bible right next to the Watchtower literature.
Yeah.
It's the way those studies are structured too is just so brainwashy.
Yeah.
It's literally just the primary material you're looking at is the publication that they put out.
But what do you think happened after I said that I was maybe interested in that? What do you think was the very next thing they did?
They probably wanted to say, we want you to have a Bible study with us, or
read this literature, read this, this, and the pamphlet storm began. And,
that's what I brought up on the Neil show last Thursday when I did his show. It's the same information over and over and over again, and even their Watchtower magazine they use for one of their meetings has
I've got that here somewhere.
Yeah, there's a number in there that has a question. And you look on the very bottom, it'll give you the answer. And then they want you to give it your answer in your words, but basically to agree with them, regardless of what the verse is related to. They'll have a verse there, and a lot of times it's unrelated.
Yeah,
my opinion, Eric can tell you, this experience with that.
It's very
recovery
version.
It's actually this is real good for the New Testament. It's broken down into.
That's not Watchtower literature, though, is it? That's
no.
New. Oh, okay.
No, hell no.
I was going to say, since when do they care about recovery? They just want to
go to hell. So this has when you read it, you've got it's got up here's the verses, and then down here's explanation of it for each page.
Oh, okay.
And that's why you have a Bible that thick that is just the New Testament.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
But
yeah, with the witness publications, it's literally just, they might have changed it up recently, because I haven't gone to a witness meeting in years, and I know they've kind of gone more to online publications where they're on tablets and stuff, because they're shutting down their printing, because printing is expensive.
JW.org is their big push.
Yeah. And in the old days, and it's probably still the case now, it's a typical book study, a Watchtower study, a Bible study, or a book study. Any of those three is basically just, here's our publication, here's paragraphs. Each paragraph has associated questions. Right. You read the paragraph, maybe read one of the supporting scriptures that's in the paragraph, and then they'll ask the conductor of the study will ask the question with that paragraph. And then as the student, you're supposed to just basically regurgitating what was said in the paragraph. Just they encourage you to paraphrase, do it in your own words, internalize it.
Well, as long as it agrees with board policy, or
as long as it agrees. Yeah.
Well, that's actually there's a reason for that. That makes sure that you're not just taking these things down as rote memory. You're actually learning them. That's it's part of the brainwashing.
but it is basically we tell you, you tell it back to us. Okay, good. Next paragraph. We tell you, you tell us.
Right.
Next paragraph.
Well,
and
have you seen how Ken Ham operates?
Yeah.
So he says something and they repeat it back.
Yeah.
Even though it's children, he keeps it short, but it's the same idea.
Well, the difference between Ken Ham and the Watchtower is the Watchtower is the largest publication or printer in the world.
Ken's got the largest boat in the world. You shut up.
I don't care.
and it's not the largest boat.
Are they?
And
Are they still
what
large?
the Watchtower has that the Ken doesn't have is free labor.
Wow.
Bethel, that's all it is free labor, and everybody thinks it's a privilege. I'm
Well,
going to Bethel.
It wasn't free to us Kentuckians.
Was Watch? I remember that statistic sounds so familiar. Watchtower being the largest printer in the world.
Yep.
Oh, I would imagine it is.
I know the Watchtower was the world's most widely distributed religious. The Watchtower, the world's most widely distributed printed magazine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know they have some. They have some records on Watchtower being the most distributed. The number of languages Watchtower is translated into every month is 160 languages, something like that.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean they take their printing business very seriously.
Yep.
But like I said, it's also very expensive, so they're slowly phasing it out.
Yeah.
Everything's going on to
it was
online.
like the last time we talked, we were talking about what I brought up was Michael the Archangel being Jesus. You can look it up on their own site.
Yep.
Or the Watchtower CD. It's there. Like I was telling was it Joe? He was asking me about what was it, Hell or something he's working on. And
I was making a video about hell.
I was telling him about the reasoning book where they have an answer for just about every situation, versus, suggestions. Well, you may come back with this, sort of thing. And that's when I kind of lost over the apostasy, and I forgot their definition, because I haven't dealt with them for a while, so twisted. And then, from the real definition of what an apostate is, just anybody that leaves a club, an organization, or religion.
Yeah,
they go a step further and say that you're actually leaving Jehovah and his organization.
Yeah,
when not most, I don't even know what the number is now because it's been so long, but a lot of ex-JWs are apostates of something, and most of the time it's Catholicism.
Yep.
That they convert to, and then Catholics convert to JW, just because the structures are so similar and familiar to them. They don't really question a lot of it.
Yeah, it's like a clear hierarchy. Like the only real difference is you're going from Trinitarian to Unitarian, and you're going from weekly mass to a yearly mass with the memorial,
and opposed to the governing body of the Watchtower, which is there. And I'm surprised you weren't part of the 144,000, Eric.
Yeah, no, I was. I never felt that. I never felt that internal calling. I knew people who claimed to be 144,000.
I was privileged to see one person partake in the memorial service once.
Yeah.
And I was like a young kid, and everybody's looking at him like, okay, but what are they going to say? No, you're not anointed. So they went ahead and give it to him. And it was kind of weird because there were apostates there who actually took, the communion. Yeah. And then afterwards, to me, it's just kind of weird. It's okay, you don't believe in this religion. I don't know if they were Christian or Muslim or atheist, but wouldn't that be kind of like dining with Satan? What would be my...
Just in case.
They did it just for the shock value. If you were to see the face on JWs of anybody partaking, because it's so rare, you got to realize their thinking is only 144,000 are good enough to sit at the right hand of Jesus since Jesus was here. Yeah. So 2,000 plus years, he couldn't fill the 144,000. And even then, some of them can fall away, even after, the new system. It's just weird. There's no assurance. And I think, you and me talked about this, Joe, even in heaven. So it's like God, lets you pass the final test, but yet you can still fall away. Jehovah's kind of weak, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, I remember being taught that as well, that, once you make it a new system, you're not necessarily safe.
Right.
You can still, you could still just one day get up and say, hey, I'm done living, and then flip off God, and he'll just strike you down, and that's it. Yeah.
I'm going to be annihilated. And that's another aspect of, their annihilation to me is sick.
Yeah.
They're going to resurrect you just to tell you, hey, you didn't make it to the new system, so we're going to destroy you and kill you again forever.
So my interpretation of that was, you're resurrected. So Armageddon hits, the old world is swept away, the new system takes root, and then during the new system, there will be waves of resurrected people from the old system to be given a second chance. And I don't know if the witnesses, I don't ever recall witnesses saying you will be resurrected and judged and killed again. It will be, God will just determine whether you're worthy of the chance at the new system, and you'll be resurrected and given a chance. If you're resurrected, and you say, no, I don't want any part of this, then you're killed again.
Right.
Yeah. That's
if you didn't do enough in this, life, then you still get annihilated.
Yeah, and if you're really bad in this life, you're not resurrected in the next life.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just and then the 1,000-year reign of Jesus Christ in the new system, like new system will take root. 1,000 years goes. So at the beginning of the new system, Armageddon, beginning of new system, Satan is imprisoned in the abyss, as mentioned in Revelation. 1,000 years goes by, humanity flourishes, everyone's perfect health, living forever under Jesus' rule. And then Satan will be let out one last time for one last test. And then he'll mislead those in the new system. And then Jehovah will then step in and finally destroy Satan, finally destroy all the ones that followed him. And then finally, that now it's just it's infinite paradise on earth. And
Right.
yeah.
Clean
It's
up
such
the dead body still.
yeah. And this new system is literally built on billions of bodies, like billions of corpses lie under your feet, when you're planting that garden and building that house. And it's like,
but if you look at the literature, they all got smiles on their face, cleaning up the bodies
smiles.
of their families and friends.
Yeah, they're playing with the tigers and the lions.
And they get
all
the
got
house that they picked out, during this system.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, it's such a bizarre religion that's so it's like, not to be derogatory about it, but they really just sit around and just jerk off at the idea of billions of people dying. Like they just can't wait for this, because it's not because they really want people to die, at least not most of them do. They just want their problems to go away. And who doesn't? Who doesn't want their health problems to go away? Who doesn't want the stresses of life to go away? And they're willing to say, hey, I'm okay with accepting the death of billions of people to solve my problems.
Right.
And the Tony Morris, the recently outed governing body member, he was especially focused on that. He has this infinite video where he's talking about how Jehovah will snuff out his enemies and they'll vanish like smoke. And he actually, like, on the stage, he brings out a match and lights it and go, whew. It's like smoke. That's what Jehovah's enemies are gonna, Jehovah's enemies are literally anyone who's not a Jehovah's Witness on planet Earth.
And even some of them are still enemies. They just don't realize it yet. Like when you were a believer. I mean,
but he's so focused on I can't wait for Jehovah to destroy his enemies. He's basically saying I can't wait for Jehovah to destroy non-Jehovah's Witnesses.
Right. Well, and what's sad is I remember in meetings, they would have announcements like, gosh, what was it? Probably Hurricane Katrina. There was 15, people, a church got hit, Baptist church, 15 people died, and people almost were excited about that. As sick as it sounds, they would get, up. That's just showing that we're closer to the end. We're closer to the end. Oh, a tornado killed 50 people.
Every disaster celebrated. Yeah, every disaster celebrated because it's affirmation of the systems coming to an end. Yeah,
just around the corner, and I never caught that until I was really starting to doubt.
Yeah,
and it was just like, I think we talked about this, Eric, and I just mentioned earlier. When driving around in field service, people are picking out houses. People are still alive, but in the new system, I want that house. And I kept thinking, first, this is sick and disgusting. Then I'm thinking, well, how do they do the higher? Who gets
when those people are dead? I'm moving in there.
Some witnesses say that. I'm so glad I never was in that type of thing. I was never walking around going, once you're dead, I'm taking this house. I'm glad, but I've heard of people doing that.
Yeah.
The closest I ever got to a conversation like that is when I was talking to my mom, and she thought that she was going to hold on to her house after Armageddon. And I was like, what makes you think you're going to live in this house once Armageddon hits? And like, you can kind of see, she was like, wait, what? Huh? I can't live in this house? Like, because the witnesses are always telling you, the witnesses don't want you to ever feel comfortable or rested or settled. You must always be ready to get up and move, do whatever they tell you to do. If the new system is here and you're told to go to Africa to do rebuilding, you're going to Africa to do rebuilding, even though you're in the United States or you're in North America. And it's like they even tell you, you in the new system, you may not have a job assigned to you that you want to do, but you have to do it because it's assigned to you. And like, one of your jobs might be corpse disposal. Yeah. You might be for hundreds of years disposing of the billions of corpses around the planet.
You just do it with a smile on your face.
Do it with a smile on your face. Be happy about it. Yeah. But yeah, and yeah, I've heard of stories of folks walking around and field ministry and going, yeah, that would be. I don't know if it's like half joking or half true, or maybe they really believe it. But yeah, I always thought it was like really odd and sick, walking around going, once this person's dead, I'm gonna take their house.
And also, if you notice in the publications that all of a sudden you have meat eating tigers and lions and bears. Oh my, they're family pets. They're no longer carnivorous. They don't eat meat. They eat grass. Literally,
they eat grass. Yeah,
go figure.
That was always something that I never could understand either, because the idea, the witness's idea of why animals are the way they are now, is because once sin took root in mankind, the animal, like, it's somehow man's sin threw off the balance of the animal kingdom, the perfect balance that God put in place, and all of a sudden, now we have a perfectly formed, balanced system of certain animals eating other animals. Sharks have teeth that are made for killing and rending meat off of other fish. Like, God created that, but that creature was eating kelp or something. And it's like, now all of a sudden sin takes root. Now the shark can eat flesh, but it's perfectly built for eating flesh.
Right.
Same thing with, tigers and lions. Like, tigers, the fangs on tigers or large cats of prey, the fangs, when they go after prey and they latch onto the neck of the prey with their teeth, those fangs, they pierce and they pinch basically the animal's jugular, and it cuts off blood to the brain. Like, when a tiger attacks and goes in for the kill, it's actually suffocating its prey. It's actually not bleeding the prey out. Those are like a couple examples of just how these animals are perfectly built to do these things. But witnesses believe that God made them that way with the intent of them eating basically a vegetarian diet. Man sins, and then all of a sudden all these designs are perfect for killing other animals. Like, that was always a disconnect that I could never put together in my brain. It's like, why did God make them this way when he had no intention for them to be used in the way that they're designed for? They're supposed to be. Yeah.
And I never stopped there. I always went like a step further. Think about all the animals, or even just mosquitoes.
Yeah, mosquitoes. That's another good one.
Mosquitoes, do they become out of check, or is Jehovah so perfect designer that he already had something instilled that, okay, we've got a billion of them. They start dying automatically, or whatever happens in the new system. Spiders no longer, and even snakes are no longer venomous. But they're your pet.
I remember being told the mosquitoes were actually supposed to feed off of trees, and then after sin, they started feeding off of humans. Yeah.
What, they're like woodpeckers? No, baby woodpeckers.
Yeah, woodpeckers. But then you learn other things, like that one eyeworm that its entire reproductive cycle is within the eyes of animals and humans, making them go blind. And the closer you look at the animal kingdom, like, these creatures are, I'm using loosely the term design, but evolution turned them into what they are. They fill these niches, and that's why they're so kind of perfectly built for doing what they do in life. Once you get away from that and you start like seeing real answers, like, oh, I see why the animals were like this. It's not because they were designed to do this for some other purpose that wasn't intended, and I got that whole confusing thing. It's just, hey, they fill a niche, and the animals that are better suited at surviving in their environments thrive and reproduce, and the ones who aren't suited for it die off and don't pass on their genes. And you can understand that, hey, after lots and lots of time of this occurring, animals are going to fine-tune themselves to basically be the perfect killing machine if it needs to be, or the perfect surviving machine if it needs to be. And yeah, just so much more satisfying answers than, oh, God just created it this way. It just created it this way, and then man sinned, and now all of a sudden the animals are doing things that they're not supposed to do, even though they're perfectly designed to do those things. It's confusion. And that's one of the other things that was part of my deconversion process, was learning about, like actually learning school book scientific theory of evolution, old deep time, sciences, not the stuff that's filtered through the Jehovah's Witness, publications. Right. There's a really infamous book. You probably remember it, Azo. How Did Life Get Here, by Evolution or by Creation?
Oh yeah,
it was called the Blue Book. Yeah, we called it the Evolution Book, and then the witness higher ups were like, no, it's the Creation Book, even though we all call it the Evolution Book.
Right.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to the red Paradise on Earth book, so I went the wrong direction.
Oh yeah.
As soon as you said that, oh yeah, I remember that one too.
Yeah,
I got it.
The old evolution book. I remember certain pictures in that book, basically showing like fruit flies, like it's like Ken Ham level,
right?
Crap. Like, oh, a fruit fly just generates a fruit fly. And yeah, sure, there's mutations, but all those offspring are still fruit flies. But they don't. Obviously, yeah, a dog is never going to produce a non-dog, but if you have enough of a long line of creatures reproducing, you're eventually going to have, when you compare the first creature in that line to the 1000th, you're going to have two different things,
right?
And yeah,
so quick question: how did you reconcile this with things you were learning in school, or were you not being taught evolution in school either?
I was taught evolution. I took one biology class in high school, and I distinctly remember the teacher talking about, I don't know if the teacher was a believer or not. This was in Las Vegas. I remember the teacher saying, I have to teach you this. So I got a feeling she wasn't a believer. And it was just...
That's how they did it at our school.
It was like a one day. I remember it was like a 1 day or a 1 week thing. I don't even remember taking any tests on it.
No.
This was probably like 9th grade.
It was like within the first paragraph of the first chapter in our book said, well, there's this other theory about this evolution thing, but
yeah,
and then went on to teach you everything about intelligent design.
Yeah, I remember it was very brief and glossed over, and it was biology class is more like learning. Here's how the internal functions of a cell work, or here's how a digestive system works. But not very much on like the actual origins of these systems.
Yeah.
And even when I went back to college, after I deconverted, I went back to college. I got my bachelor's degree in computer science. I took geology as my two sciences. I didn't take biology. I wasn't really interested in biology.
My degree is in computer science too.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Just computer science, and I was most focused on the computer science classes and also the philosophy logic classes when I was going back for my degree. But I mean, and everything I know about evolution or biology is mostly from just listening to YouTube and also doing a little bit of light reading, like on Wikipedia and other reliable sources.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, I mean, evolution, while there are these complex, parts to it, it's a pretty simple, easy to understand idea. Sure, when you get down to, what's actually going on within the genes and all that stuff, there's complexity there, but you don't need to know that stuff to understand how evolution works. And I definitely think they could have done a better job teaching it to you and I both.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think the best way to teach it is, I mean, like, and this is one of the biggest hangups I've seen over and over and over again when it comes to believers trying to wrap their head around it. Like you mentioned, evolution's a very simple concept. The nitty gritty is complex, but overall, it's a very simple process. The problem is that usually believers will try to conflate evolution with abiogenesis and also conflate that with, like cosmology and Big Bang theory. Right. It's like, if you can divide, I mean, obviously, the Big Bang or the origin of the universe has to occur first, obviously. The origin of life has to occur next, obviously. Then evolution can take place. Like, yes, they are linked. It's a causal link, but just break that up and just look at them individually. Just look at evolution with just the idea that life's already here. We don't know how, but let's just run with it for right now. Life is already here. How do we understand how life changes over time? Yeah. And getting folks to basically break those up and to partition them off in their brain and say, just take each one individually, understand each one individually, then put them all together and understand how it all works together, is better than, tackling it all at once. And once you look at like evolution in a vacuum and go, okay, once life is here and life is replicating, we have mutations, we know we have environmental pressures. And once you accept the fact that we have deep time, then it makes sense that, many changes will accumulate in a line of life forms over time.
It's exactly what you would expect.
I saw a really good, there's two really good examples of kind of illustrate to people how the process can work. Just the cumulative effect of micro changes over time. One was look at languages. A really good example is, from Latin to French. Latin and French are two different languages, but you never had a person born to a Latin speaking parents speaking French. Every person born in that line spoke Latin a little bit differently until finally, way down the line, now you have somebody you can be considered speaking French. And if you put that French speaker in with their Latin ancestor and put them together, they're not speaking the same language, even though they're part of the same line.
Right.
And that's the same thing with evolution. You're going to have just these gradual changes accumulate.
Yeah.
A second really good illustration of this is you can probably find it on YouTube. They did an experiment, or not, it wasn't really an experiment. It was more of just a kind of a social exercise. You get a piece of paper and had a perfectly straight line drawn down this piece of paper. And they had 100 people. They would put tracing paper down and they would tell you, trace over this line with the tracing paper. So the first person would trace that straight line on the tracing paper by hand.
And the next person had to trace their line.
Ditch the first paper and now take the new line, new tracing paper, have the next person do it. And they actually took photos of each of the lines, and over 100 generations, you could see this line like changing and doing all kinds of weird things because the 50th person in the line was working off of the 49th person's line and not able to see the very first line. So you could see this line doing all these weird things and changing over time. And, at the end of after 100 people, you had this like really weird curved line when compared to that very straight line. And that's only 100 generations of just a simple line. When you're talking about genes replicating, you're talking about environmental changes, you're talking about all these other things, you can see how, over time, changes accumulate. And pretty soon you're going to have something that's completely unrecognizable compared to
I think that's a wonderful explanation.
Yeah.
Or
it's a good illustration.
Yeah.
Literally an illustration because they're drawing.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, while in college, evolution was not anything that I ever studied in college. I did have a couple classes that relied on it, but that's something I picked up later. I did, however, some of the facts about evolution I discovered in college were damning for the things I was taught. But young Earth creationism is pretty much the same no matter who's teaching it. It's still wrong in all the same ways because you can't have a young Earth and have all those other things too. So they have to make up their various excuses for them.
I just want to say, sorry, just tangent. My wife just realized I made coffee and left it in the coffee machine. So she just brought me in this amazing serving platter of cream, sugar, and coffee. Just snuck it in here. Yeah, she's all right. She brought me the cream.
She is her to you. She's all right in my book.
She brought me my creamer. Really hard to see. This is one of the line merchandise. You're on the wine with Shannon and Paul. So yeah. Jim. So I ordered this, and Jimmy was very upset I didn't get You're on the Wine with Jimmy and Matt. It's with Shannon and Paul. So anyway, I got my coffee, so this is good. My day just got a lot better.
Yeah. No, I didn't even have any coffee. I usually have coffee and at least smoke something other than cigarettes in the morning, and I didn't do any of that today.
Well, if you didn't sleep till noon, you could have done that.
Yeah, no.
Eric's been up since 9 o'clock. His time.
Yeah, I'm going on almost 2 hours now. Yeah, not bad.
I feel weird today, honestly. 12 hours of sleep is odd for me. I usually do about 4.
Yeah, my headache today is completely self-inflicted. I made some very bad dietary choices last night, and now I'm paying for it today.
Yeah. Okay, let's all bow our heads and pray to Jehovah for Eric.
Yeah. Pray that my hangover goes away.
So, like in my area, one of the things is because a lot of people associate the Jehovah's Witness with the missionary work of going around and knocking on doors and going and talking to people, and they don't do that here. There's not a lot of Jehovah's Witness here, but I think there's 2 or 3 of their Kingdom Halls are here. So not many, but a few. And their thing isn't so much getting you like going and knocking on doors. They try to get people to, oh, let me have this guy call you, and then whoever calls you is one of their indoctrinators, I guess.
Indoctrinators, yeah.
Yeah, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
And they call, and then they're like, oh, why don't you come down and meet me down here at this community center? They try to get you on neutral grounds, and then start in with, well, if you just come and join our Bible study, you'll hear about this. And it's all about the recruitment. Like it's
you said this was the Witnesses in your area or a different group in your area?
The Witnesses.
The Witnesses, yeah. The whole goal of the Witnesses, well, up to about a year ago, they were tracking every publication placed, every hour spent in ministry, every Bible study. Like those were all tracked and were kept in the database, because they track their stats, and that's how they kind of measure the health of the organization. They try to use those numbers to like boast about, look how much we're growing. We're only 8 million people. We have 10 million Bible studies. Or that's probably pretty inflated. 8 million people, you probably maybe get a few 100,000 Bible studies.
Right. Well, the last time I heard, it takes like 7,000 hours just to get one recruit.
Yeah.
So it's not very effective.
It's wildly inefficient. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, about a year ago, they dropped all that. They said, you are no longer reporting time. You're no longer reporting books. They're just not reporting this anymore because the numbers lately have been very bad. They've had negative growth.
Yeah.
They aren't publishing their yearbooks anymore, which has like a breakdown of all those numbers from all the different nations. So we're no longer going to have visibility and like how rapidly the organization is shrinking or decaying. But up to then, the motivation was, I want to get my hours up. I want to have good numbers to report back to the Watchtower. Now that they've dropped all that, I imagine probably the strategy and the priorities are basically purely conversion now. They want to get you into a Bible study as fast as possible so they can start the indoctrination as fast as possible. And if you go down to the community center, the Kingdom Hall, or wherever they want to meet you, they're gonna it's literally gonna be just like you're a 3-year-old in class, just repeating back what they give to you,
mimicking.
And that's how they want to get make their converts is just by indoctrination. I had Jehovah's Witnesses on my door over the summer. They came back 6 to 8 times, like over multiple weekends. They kept on coming back. It was 2 guys. At the very end, they offered me a Bible study, and I said, "Yeah, sure, I'll take a Bible study, but I'm going to ask for." They didn't know I was an ex-Jehovah's Witness, of course, because
they would have ran.
Yeah, they would have ran away. Yeah,
chances are.
Anyway, they offered me a Bible study in their last visit, and I never saw them again. So I was really thought that was kind of weird. I did tell them, I said, because after 8 return visits or 6 to 8 return visits, I can't remember exactly how many, I had asked them so many questions. They knew that I told them straight up, I said, we can go ahead and have a Bible study. That's fine with me, but I'm going to ask you a lot of questions based off the material you're giving me. And I think that might be what killed it, is they said, okay, well, he's hard-hearted, or he's not, ready. Jehovah has to tenderize him. Jehovah has to tenderize him a little bit before we can come back and try again. And I wouldn't be surprised if next summer I see them again when the weather warms up and the rain kind of stops, and they'll probably be back.
Yeah.
See, I haven't been following the literature myself, but I think it's probably about the time they coyly, outwardly make another prediction, because usually when their numbers start diminishing, that's when they usually have the end, like 75 or
the love of the greater number is cooling off and all this stuff.
But it was funny because just before even during my ex online shtick as a so-called XJW, a lot of them were counting time on the internet, and the board was very, no, you can't do that. That's not fair. But they still, Jehovah's Witnesses still did it. And for them to do away with that totally, it just kind of blows my mind. I haven't even heard that. So that's something new to me.
It's pretty groundbreaking, not groundbreaking, but like earth shattering. Like, we're not
because
reporting time anymore.
The whole recruitment is these numbers and go get out in the field and sell those magazines and, So it's changed even back, in the 20 plus years that I've been out of it. Yeah. Well, not even 20, but
I always felt bad for the Jehovah's Witness kids in school here, because there were so few of them that they were like I mean, they might as well have been Satan worshipers.
Yeah. Yeah.
What doesn't matter? We see that they take that as persecution, and that's what they thrive for. Even like rejection at the door. You'd walk to the end of, Eric can verify this. You knock the dust from your feet, go to the next house, and they're just persecuting us, sort of thing. It just reinforces.
They were definitely persecuting them.
Yeah. Well, it's funny as we were out witnessing one day, going door to door, come across a couple Mormon missionaries, 2 elders. And one of the guys that was in my group, because at least when I was there, since I wasn't baptized, I was supposed to keep my mouth shut, because I don't know everything. That's why Laurel, the elder I was studying, was always there. And I would always get myself in trouble because I'd want to answer it. I know the answer. And, usually get better reception with my answer than Laurel did. And I'd always get, we don't do that. You're still learning. But when we come across the 2 JW or the 2 Mormon dudes, they got into an argument about who the false prophet was. At that time, I couldn't find or see the irony in that. And now I look back and laugh my ass off, because here you have 2 groups both making false prophecies that didn't come true, and they're diverting it. Although it's okay with the witnesses because they weren't inspired, and at least they admitted they were wrong.
Yeah, they have a little.
Just look at the test for a false prophet. It's right in there, small print.
Yeah.
Oh, but if they admit they were wrong, it's okay.
Yeah, they got a little escape hatch. Yeah, anything we do, there's always like an escape. Yeah, and the funny thing is, like you were mentioning how witnesses will point at, it's becoming harder to convert people, therefore it's the time of the end. But when their numbers were swelling and growing, Jehovah's accelerating the work, that means it's the time of the end. So they're having it both ways, where no matter what's happening, it's evidence that it's the time of the end. Are we growing? That means Jehovah's blessing us as the time of the end. Are we shrinking? Oh, the love of the greater number is cooling off. It's the time of the end. Same thing with your personal, experiences. Oh, I'm doing everything I can for Jehovah. Good things are happening in my life. Jehovah's blessing me. Oh, I'm doing everything I can for Jehovah, and bad things are happening in my life. Oh, Satan is trying to pull you away. Stay strong. If I leave, when I left the religion, my life became infinitely better. That was, Satan's rewarding you to keep you out. Or if I leave and my life becomes worse, it's, Jehovah's withdrawn his protection from you, and now Satan is wreaking havoc on your life. No matter what happens in any situation, it is evidence of the time of the end. It is evidence for the message. Right. Virtually no falsifiability in any of this. So there's virtually no way to determine whether you're actually wrong about this or not. And that's something I really started appreciating about 2 years ago, when I learned like what, not 2 years ago, but longer than that. But when I learned what falsification was, and I started reflecting back on all the teachings of the witnesses, like there is no way. Everything has an escape hatch. There is no way. There's no evidence that works against their case that we're living in the time of the end. Everything works for it, no matter what it is.
And the worse, the better. The more people that die, the better in their eyes.
Yeah. The more tragedy, the more that occurs. Terrorist attacks, natural disasters, school shootings, church bombings, wars. All of it is this is all evidence that Armageddon's right around that corner, and it's.
But Jehovah holds no responsibility for any of those things either.
Of course not. No, of course not.
Yeah, because like I mentioned earlier, they would announce this stuff like just before the meeting would start, depending on what day. And there's like 3 or 4 meetings a week that they encourage you to go to, just so you can get indoctrinated even further. But when they would mention X amount of people died during this, people would actually be clapping. At least it's happened in 2 different congregations that I had visited, including my own. And it was just like like I said, at that time, it's like, oh yeah, cool, woohoo. Now looking back, it's like, that's sick as fuck. I mean, sorry, but,
absolutely. Like just reveling over people's misfortune and death.
Because
it's
almost
good
there.
News for you. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
it has the same ring.
The more effective Catholics, especially like the child abuse, the more it proved that Jehovah was right, even though they have their own, pedophile scandal. Just go to silentlambs.org and you'll see what I'm talking about. And I'm sure Eric's well aware of that too.
Silent Lambs, and then also the Australia Royal Commission that went down in like 2016.
There's just so much information out there that I didn't have back in the day, or it was just starting actually. ours was more of the AOL chat rooms, the MSN. Now they're gone. And I miss those days because you'd go in there, and I'd go in there at first as a JW wannabe and fight tooth and nail for Jehovah. Then it was like when I walked away, kind of like Eric was talking, I wasn't so much pissed off at God because I was still thinking there is no God, even though I kept trying to fake it to make it. I was pissed off at the org that they're telling me this as gospel and millions of other people, and it's all nonsense, and people are dying from like the blood transfusion bullshit. And if a JW would just read, I think it's Leviticus 17 is the main one, not to eat blood, or you're unclean, and they take that as a spiritual death. But if you read to the end of that chapter, which is only 4 or 5 verses past, it'll tells you how to make yourself clean again. Go to the river, wash yourself off until sunset, I believe, or maybe sunrise, whichever it is.
One of the ones where you have to take 2 pigeons with you.
But the Borg won't tell you this. It's like that one verse that proves it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of like me saying, okay, the shortest verse in the Bible says Jesus wept. So you can't be a true Christian if you don't cry all the time.
Yeah.
That's
kind of the whole, that I think what you just touched on there is kind of it really illustrates kind of what kind of a circus the Bible is.
Right.
Especially when it comes to the way Christians like Jehovah's Witnesses interpret it, because the witnesses will delineate Old Testament from New Testament with Old Covenant. This was Jehovah's agreement with the ancient Israelites, the book of the law, the massive number of rules and stories of the Israelites conquering community nations and things like that. And then when Jesus came and died for our sins, that put an end to the Old Covenant, and now we're under a new covenant, which is love your neighbor as yourself, preach the good news of the kingdom, all that stuff. So the witnesses take advantage of that by going, okay, well, we're followers of Jesus, we need to preach, but we can rely on the Old Testament to get an idea of what God thinks of things, even though we aren't under those laws. So if you were to present like what you mentioned with consuming blood and then washing yourself in the river, they'll say, oh, well, we're no longer under the old law, so washing yourself in the river will no longer work, whatever however it worked on before. But we can still understand the principle that God doesn't want you consuming blood, so that's why we don't do blood transfusion. Like that's the rhetoric they'll give you,
right? And it's still the hypocrisy of it.
Yeah,
it's take bits and pieces of this blood, or better yet, we've come up with something better than God did with these blood, alternative blood things.
Yeah,
wrong answer, people. And then again, if you're taking the plasma, it's still part of the blood, or some of the other hemoglobins or whatever. I don't know how it breaks down.
Red blood cells, white blood cells, plasma.
Right. If you take part of blood, it's all blood. It's like eating. I don't eat a hamburger, but I'm going to go ahead and do a hindquarter.
Yeah. But my point with that is that gives the witnesses or any religious group that interprets it that way, basically any tons of latitude to craft whatever religion they want, because they can look back on the Old Testament and go, we'll take this as God's opinion, we'll ignore this, like ignoring the shellfish thing, ignoring the mixed fabrics thing, ignoring the sowing 2 different crops in the same field.
Right.
They ignore all those, but they'll latch on to ones like don't consume blood, don't have tattoos, homosexuality bad. All those other things that they cherry pick, and they go, this happens to align with our idea of what true Christians are. So they and
don't celebrate holidays. So forget that one.
Yeah, and it really is just build your own religion at that point. If I set out and I say, okay, I have old covenant, new covenant type mentality, and then I look at the Old Testament and I go, okay, this is like God's opinions about or God's positions about things. I can now craft just about any religion I want. I could say, if I can make a Reformed Jehovah's Witness religion and say, hey, you know what, the stone homosexuals part of the Old Testament, I'll just ignore that. My religion allows homosexuality. The same reason that the witnesses.
As long as they smoke weed, they're stoned then.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go.
I'm helping you with your new religion, Eric. I'll be one of your elder bishops, if I'm worthy, that is.
Yeah.
I'll get my hair done for you.
Yeah.
Or did.
Yeah.
I made one comment in one stream like half a year ago. Like, hold on, like I was going to join a stream. Like, hold on, guys, I had to comb my hair because.
And you haven't forgot it.
Also, you haven't forgot it. You latched onto that, and every time I see you, there's always a hair comment. So
I can't remember anything else, but I can remember, make fun of Eric for his hair. What kind of touch on what you were talking about, with like the whole holiday. Well, we don't celebrate Christmas because, in Leviticus, it tells us not to cut a tree down, decorate it, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
But ignore everything else, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. But a lot of JWs do get around that with what I found, when I was with them, is what they call Box Day, or some of them celebrate Box Day, which is the day after Christmas.
Yeah.
They wrap stuff in plain paper. It's not Christmas. It's just Box Day.
Yeah. Box Day.
And they justify it because, well, it's not on, we're not celebrating Christmas because Christmas was yesterday.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, whatever. It's still Christmas.
We had not Thanksgiving on Fridays. Thanksgiving week, because all the turkeys were on sale, and all the witnesses are like, the turkeys are on sale, and
it wasn't Halloween candy anymore because it's the day after it was on sale. So yes, we can buy that shit.
I was actually very disciplined with Halloween candy. If I knew it was leftovers from a Halloween trick or treat thing, I wouldn't touch it. If it had like Halloween decorations on it, I wouldn't touch it.
Oh, I would.
Cupcakes at school. Whenever a student at school had a birthday and they brought like cupcakes for the entire class, I was extremely disciplined. I didn't touch any of it. I was really proud of myself, and looking back, not a loss. I mean, I missed out on cupcakes, but I think what really was the negative impact of that was the social impact of it. I was always that other student that doesn't do the things that we do.
Right.
I was always kind of like an outsider. Like whenever there was like an assembly in grade school, like an assembly for like Christmas or for Easter, I would always go to the computer lab. I would have a special excuse not to, or I would be excused by the teachers because I would have a note from my parents basically saying he's not to go to the Christmas assembly, have him do something else. And thankfully I was always sent to the computer lab. And that's kind of what got my love for computers going, and what is really probably the root of my career now is I'm a technology guy, and that probably started when I was in the computer lab by myself, 2 hours playing Oregon Trail on like old Apple IIs and Number Munchers and those old games.
Stay away from Pokemon. That's Satan.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I remember somebody. Teddy
Ruxpins were evil. I remember that.
Yeah, Teddy Ruxpin, Smurfs. Let me see. Pokemon,
Smurfs.
Teddy Ruxpin, Smurfs. Anything with magic in it.
D&D was down.
Oh yeah, D&D was really bad. Yeah, Gary Gygax was a XJW too. Creator of D&D.
Yeah, but what's funny is with all this crap and saying that birthdays and holidays, let's say holidays were bad, there's so many verses you have to ignore to even get to that mentality other than indoctrination. Because what is it, in Colossians 2:9, I believe, it talks about don't judge somebody on what they eat, what days they hold holy, or when they celebrate the Sabbath, basically.
Yeah.
And that's not the only places, but they totally ignore it because here in the Old Testament it says a thing.
Yeah.
Makes no sense.
Yeah.
But I didn't see it, when I was studying with them until I, walked away. And, there's even stuff now that I kind of question, but I mean, I think they've got the Trinity down pat. I don't see the Trinity in the Bible. Whereas before I thought I did, but I didn't understand what it was. And they actually taught me what the Trinity was, or to a degree. And I just don't see it in the Bible. So I think Christianity is, polytheist. In my opinion, but,
well, if you look at the Old Testament, the way it refers to as Jehovah being the most powerful of the gods, and you shall not have other gods before me.
He's jealous. If there's no other gods, what's he jealous of? You know.
And then what was it? What was that one demonstration? Was it Elisha calling down fire on the soaked wood?
So the Jehovah, to talk to Jehovah at.
I was thinking that was
or where was it?
That was against Molech. This is in 1 Kings 18:33. It was like a challenge. Elijah on Mount Carmel. Basically, it was basically like a face-off between the true worshipers, Elisha rooting for Jehovah, versus I think the Molech worshipers, and they had like a big pile of wood drenched in water, and they both prayed to have their God light this on fire and prove. And And the whole idea of this being in the Bible and there even being a serious challenge like this, it shows that I think overwhelmingly the Old Testament is of the opinion that Jehovah is not the only God. It's a
Right.
polytheistic book. There
Yeah.
are other
Or
false
at
gods
bare
that
minimum,
aren't
they're
as
the
powerful.
henotheists, where they think there's one
Yeah.
true God that you worship and other gods. You
Mhm.
know, that's what I think. Like JWs are definitely henotheists.
Yeah. And
Well,
yeah,
that was they burn the wood, and then they do a couple different iterations of this test, don't they? Like they burn the wood, and then there's something about sacrificing animals. I think they do more than one thing in that
I'm sure they had some
particular
animal
test.
sacrifice in there too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Blood cult. You're gotta have blood.
Yeah.
The yeah, that was the I can't remember, but yeah, I think that was Molech, wasn't it?
I think it was Molech. Molech was
Yeah.
a fire god.
Now Molech, I actually learned about Molech early because of the Bohemian Grove stuff. They said that all these rich people were going out there to do mock human sacrifice to Molech, and they had a big owl statue that they do this fake human sacrifice. And they really do the mock human sacrifice. That really happens. There's video of it, but
Yeah.
it's like it's not what it's made out to be.
Was it Molech? There's no mention of Molech in the chapter. Elijah Mount Carmel. Anyway, I don't want to bog us down in Bible study here, but yeah, it's Elijah Mount Carmel. They had the soaked wood. Elijah was praying to the Lord in all caps,
which is what we should be doing for guidance to understand these passages. We should have prayed first.
Yeah.
It
wasn't Molech. I'm sorry. It was the prophets of Baal.
Baal.
So
that's
Baal.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so basically, the prophets of Baal failed to get their god to burn the wood, so they were all seized and I think basically executed right there on the spot. Yeah. So, but yeah, like a lot of evidence here that the Old Testament considered God Jehovah one of many. Yeah.
Yeah, because when I was talking about, that's where Jehovah come down with Jehovah, and it was talking to Jehovah, and that's what Trinitarians will say. See, look, there's more. Three parts of God. And to me, that's still polytheism.
Yeah, and then there's are you familiar with like the John 1:1 change that the witnesses did to their Bible?
Oh yeah,
you familiar with that change?
Hey, yeah, God, I've got the purple people eater. The 69 where it still has Jesus being worshipped until they changed it in the 85 edition.
Yeah.
Of the ED.
Yeah.
Now what did they change?
So John 1:1 in your typical Bible, let me go to Bible Gateway here. In your typical Bible, the verses, and this is John 1:1. This is the very first verse of John, which I equate to be the thesis of the entire book. In the beginning, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So the Word is being Jesus. So in the beginning was Jesus, and Jesus was with God, and Jesus was God, is basically the typical translation of that. But if you do John 1:1 in the New World Translation, which is the Jehovah's Witness Bible, I want to make sure they haven't changed it again.
Yeah, probably good. I was going to check.
Yeah. So in John 1:1, it says that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was a God. So they add in an a God at the end, changing it from the Word was God, Jesus was God, to the Word was a God, Jesus was a God. And they inserted that indefinite article a in there to basically support their position that Jesus is not God. There's the Trinity is not the true case. There's actually, Jehovah and Jesus are two separate, distinct entities. And there's a lot of contention around that, but almost no other Bibles do this. This is pretty much just their Bible doing that. They literally change the scripture to support their interpretation of the rest of the book.
Yeah.
And they've changed it in many other places also to hide or conceal the so-called deity of Jesus, where Jesus, what is it, Colossians? I can't remember the exact verse, where it talks about that Jesus created all things, and by nothing ever being created wasn't created without him.
Yeah.
Well, the
Yeah.
JW Bible adds the other, the word other 4 times in that verse, that showing that Jesus created all other things, and it was through Jesus things were created, not by Jesus, to give him the equal footing of Jehovah.
And the funny thing is the New World Translation and the Revised New World Translation, that's a translation done by Jehovah's Witnesses, is completely anonymous. There's no names you can go back to and say, hey, so and so, why'd you translate it this way? And hear their justification for it. Well, if you look at the Greek and you look at these, blah blah blah, like, you can't do that. You can't go to the person who actually did this. It's all completely done anonymously. And the original New World Translation, I think we have a good idea of some of the translators, but it was basically just Jehovah's Witnesses with like no formal education in Greek, no formal, like they were all self-taught these languages, and they basically translated the Bible. It's New World Translation typically is considered a poor translation of the Bible because there's no real professionalism behind it. It's all done with highly motivated, self-taught people. So it's a very, very bad translation, but it's the only one they use. So,
well, the you couldn't do no worse than the Book of Mormon, I guess. So,
well, that's a whole nother that's a whole nother pile of shit.
But I mean, if we look at back in history, still even that's exactly why the King James Bible exists. Is because they had to change it to fit the doctrine of the church. And but now people say that's the Bible that you're supposed to read. Of course, religions all have their different editions and versions and all that stuff. But yeah, I'm not very familiar with a lot of the stuff to do with Jehovah's Witness, other than like I said, the things that they gave me, and I read those things just to see what it had to say. But being raised as young Earth creationist Christian, it's to me that stuff is just, it might as well be Mormon or something else, because it's like
that was another thing too with the witnesses, that they're taught that they're so special and so correct and right that you don't have to bother learning what the other religions are teaching. You just have to learn about how to teach them the correct, interpretation of the Bible.
Well, that was the big thing that they pushed on me, is that, we have been studying the Bible for all this time, and we know what it really means, and they're, it's always the truth, but it's, they were dead set on, if you want to read the Bible as it actually, is written, then you need to come hang out with us, because we're gonna teach it to you the right way. That was their big push to try and get me to talk to them or whatever. I don't know what their plans were for me, but whenever I said, because I worked cutting grass, I cut like 400 yards, and a lot of grass. And the one of these old ladies that I cut for, she, these old ladies, they would come out and bring up stuff about the Bible or whatever, and usually I'm really open about saying, I'm an atheist. I don't really, I don't really want to talk about it. Like, that's usually what I do. But a lot of times with these old ladies, I would just be like, oh yeah, okay, and just let them go on and say whatever. And then, I wasn't gonna have them stressed out and stroking out on me out in the yard because I told them their God wasn't real. So I would just kind of let them go or whatever. And she asked if I'd ever read the Bible, and I wasn't going to lie to her. So I was like, yeah, I've read it more than once. And she's like, really? You've read the whole Bible? And I said, yeah. She's like, oh, well, do you know this part and this part? And I'm like, yeah. And I like to talk, different parts of the Bible with people. I think it's interesting. There's a historical thing there too, even if you don't believe the nonsense, there's still things to be gathered from it.
There's still good bits in the Bible. Like there's some verses from Proverbs that are just beautiful. Like expectation postponed is making the heart sick, but when the thing comes, it's a tree of life. Like, yeah, it's a really accurate description of living in anticipation of something and just how it can drag you down and you can make you depressed. But once you finally get that thing you've been anticipating, oh, it feels so good. Like there's some very beautiful and very apt reflections can be found in the Bible.
Well,
The problem is you have to
Yes.
the problem is you have to like
Bible
shift
form.
through so much garbage to get to it.
Yeah. The thing that I find fascinating about the Bible, really, though, is that if you look at what was going on at the time that different parts of it were written, and then say, okay, well, what were the people who lived during this time writing? I think that I find more interest in it. I find it more interesting because of things like that, to see how people reflected on the world around them that they didn't understand, and I don't know. I find it fascinating in that way. I don't think any of it's true, but I still find it quite fascinating. I'll just leave it at that.
It's a piece of historical literature, and you can find fascinating and interesting things about it. You can find useful things about it. I think once you cross the line into this is the inerrant word of God and we must follow it, that's when you start getting into trouble. If we treated the Bible like any other historical book, like say the Epic of Gilgamesh, I think we would be a whole lot better off as a community, because we wouldn't be allowing the Bible to, influence politics in a negative direction, or to segregate and divide people. Or even to certain extremes, using the Bible to prevent families from getting blood transfusions for their sick and dying kids.
Yeah.
That's when you get into trouble.
Yeah. Taking a book of questionable origin, written by people who didn't understand these modern problems and trying to apply it to modern problems is a bad idea. But people do it every day. The Copelands would have you read the Bible rather than go to the doctor.
Yeah, it's another good example.
I don't think that there's any value in it like that, but definitely some historical value to it, and so whenever these old ladies and stuff would want to talk about the Bible or whatever, I don't care to engage in that conversation, so. She found out that I knew quite a bit about the Bible, though, and was like, "Oh yeah, you got to go talk to my guy down here." And I was like,
I told my neighbor a few months ago. I've been living in my neighborhood for 5 years now. I told my neighbor about 3-4 months ago. This topic came up that I was an atheist, and he's fairly fine with it. The funny, because it was him and somebody else. They were walking down my street and they were having a very loud spirited conversation on I think it was Bible interpretation or something like that. Anyway, they happened by me when I was working in my yard and I joined the conversation. But anyway, I mentioned I was an atheist, and then the next day I bumped into my neighbor again and he's like, "Hey Eric, I wanted to ask you some questions about how do you put it? How do you live with your atheism?" And I was like, "Oh, quite easily, but go ahead and let me know. Ask me whatever questions you want." And it turns out he's got some interesting views. He has a whole idea of there's a collective consciousness of mankind, and there's a perfect circle, and a lot of pseudo woo stuff. He's not a Christian. He holds on to certain Christian ideas like demons and satanic influence, but he has this really bizarre worldview that I couldn't even it was so out there when he was explaining it to me. My brain was short circuiting because I was trying to piece things together and make sense of it, but there wasn't really much sense to it. And whenever I asked him a question about it, I would just get more claims. And that's kind of one of the big things that I've seen with both watching atheists question Christians and also my interaction with the Christians now that I'm a more public figure about it. Is just when you ask somebody to explain something, out comes more claims, out comes more just kind of more it's just more of the same. Like there's a difference between claims and providing the evidence for those claims. And if you ask for a person for evidence, give me some evidence. Like, and I wasn't getting that with my neighbor. I would ask my question, like, how do you know this? Like, for instance, like the collective consciousness, mankind's collective consciousness. What's your evidence of that? And it was just more claims. Oh, there's circles and geometry, and drawing these relationships between mathematics and what he sees in humanity. And yeah, it's just it's just so far out there, and just the thinking is so different when it comes to actually backing up these claims. Because like if you ask me, I'm not an evolutionary biologist or anything like that, but if you ask me, hey, what's your evidence for evolution? I can go, well, we have fusion human chromosome 2, we have endogenous retroviruses, we have the fossil record, we have all kinds of different things that we can like drill down into, and I can explain what we see and how that correlates with what we expect evolution to do. But if you ask a person, hey, why do you think the Bible is true? They'll go, well, going to the Bible here, the Bible says this. Well, that's in the Bible. Why do you think that's true? Well, you go to the Bible and it says this. Okay, that's in the Bible. Why do you think the Bible's true? And it just the difference between the approaches to backing up your claims versus not. It's kind of one of the things that really strikes me that in these interactions. So.
Yeah, no, and just like you said, asking the question, how do you know that? That's a really basic, easy way to find where somebody's coming from. Like, what makes you think that's true? And why do you hold this thing because that's not in the Bible? Why do you think that's true? And that's that I actually contend that there are as many beliefs, like individual beliefs in God, as there are believers. I don't think that. I'm sure there's people who you could come and say, well, yeah, almost every one of their beliefs are the same or whatever. But even within, different denominations, I would say that there's no two believers that believe the same thing completely. And whenever you get a lot of those little details of those things are really important too, because it's like, once you go outside of what this book says, then you have zero justification for what you're saying. Like you're just making shit up at that point. And I think there's a lot of that. And getting actual believers who are willing to talk about what they believe rather than make their arguments is harder than hell to get them to do on YouTube, especially. I can talk to them on X sometimes, but that usually just results in some bigot crazy shit because it's X.
Twitter's I try to avoid it. That's why I appreciate street epistemology so much. It's because it's non-invasive, non-confrontational. It has a really good system of asking the what, why, and how. Like, what do you believe? Why do you believe it? How do you back that up? And you can pepper in other questions in there, like, okay, what's your confidence level that this claim is true? Which I like quite a lot, because if somebody says, I believe a God exists, you can ask, okay, what's your confidence level that this God exists? 0 to 100. And I've had people say 90%. I've had people say 100%. And then you can say, okay, well, let's hold on to that number and let's ask some questions. Like, okay, or let's maybe switch gears to the Bible. Everything the Bible says is true. What's your confidence level in that? Why do you think that? How do you know that? And then ask some questions. Maybe say, okay, what's your best reason? They give you your best reason. You ask some questions in there. You maybe identify a contradiction or identify, hey, perhaps you don't have the evidence that you think you have for supporting this claim. And then at the end of the conversation, you can then ask again, okay, now where's your confidence level at? And you can usually get a decent idea of any effect you might have had on them in that conversation. Or better yet, let them take that home with them. Let them take the, once they're away from the conversation, the defenses are down, the shields are down, and their brain starts to catch up with what was said. Maybe next time you talk to them again and say, hey, what's your confidence level on this now? Like, what did I have any effect on raising it or lowering it? And that's why that's kind of one of the things that I've been like trying to focus on, is basically just honing my street epistemology, because I've seen so many good examples of it.
Well, I'll tell you a good place to do this. I don't know if you're familiar with this or not, but the RFR volunteers, like most of the training stuff and everything that they do to take phone calls and chats and things is all approaching questions with street epistemology type stuff. I signed up to do volunteer work for them, and I was going through the
Awesome.
training stuff, and I was like, I recognize this. I was like, yeah, I know what they're talking about here.
Yeah.
And but that's how they. I mean, just as practice or something, it's it's a good way to talk to actual believers and use that type of thing and learn it better.
And street epistemology is really just a systemized Socratic approach. It's just it's a pattern of asking questions. You're going to do like what, why, how, and just everything that comes your way. What, why, how? What, why, how? Ask confidence levels. And then if you get really good at it, which I'm far from that, you can start identifying contradictions in their position. Because the whole idea of street epistemology is you want to identify. You want to uncover cognitive dissonance within them, and once you find that, you want to amplify it. You want to make it unignorable. It's like, hey, you have contradiction in your position. You have two conflicting ideas, and I was like, one of these cannot be right. So what are you going to do about that? And you might not get an answer in that conversation. That might be something to take away. So it's a really good approach, and I really appreciate it, and I'm very fascinated by it. I'm continuing to learn it and to practice it.
Yeah.
So, hopefully within a year, 2, 3 years, I'll probably be much better at it than I am now. So,
well, just for me, that hands-on thing with RFR was a good way for me to put it into practice, because that's how I'll end up learning it better is by doing it. For me, that's what works anyway. And that's why that just brought up that thought. So you've been actively doing a channel for what, just over a year, or right around a year? Yeah. Mm-hmm. I've seen you previously, in several different places. You've done shows with those guys over at the Line, and you do your thing on your channel, of course, but you do a lot of this, visiting other channels and talking to people and stuff, and I'm glad you came on today to talk a little bit about
absolutely, especially
the Jehovah's Witness stuff, because that's something I don't know a lot about, and I always want to learn something new. And as he's been excited to get to talk about those things, because again, I don't ever talk about them. So
I about wet myself. He was talking to me about the hell and the Jehovah Witness point of view. It's like, oh yeah, I know all about this shit.
Because the witnesses have such an esoteric position on so many things in the Bible that it's not very relatable. Like in some respects, not very relatable to other Christian denominations, like hellfire. Like there's no hellfire in Jehovah's Witnesses religion. So so when you can finally meet somebody who's like, oh yeah, we're actually Jehovah's Witnesses, like you're on the same wavelength a lot of times. It's always kind of refreshing. It's like, oh, okay, there are people.
What's even neater is when you're on the same side or been through some of the same experiences, but you don't know what you think you know. I mean, kind of like with the Michael the Archangel being Jesus, or when Eric says something, it's like, is that right? Look it up. Individual it was. I just either I don't remember it, or it's like we weren't taught. And it just shows you how different, even though they teach the same shit in all the same kingdom halls. I mean, if you can go to your kingdom hall, say in Indianapolis, and then go to one in California, they're having the same talk with the same information on the same day, just to tell you how much they are, reinforcing everything, that they're trying to get you to believe.
They maintain tight control over what's taught in their churches. And then, they prop that up as, oh, look how unified we are. But it's really, they have a stranglehold over each congregation. Like if any elders step out of line, those elders are deleted. Heads will roll. If a congregation stepping out of line, heads will roll, and they'll install somebody in there to bring things back on track. And then they tout this as, oh, God's blessing us with unity, but it's more like, we're using mob tactics to keep our lieutenants in line. Our
thousands who are supposed to be in on it don't know what's going on. The governing body released this. I did not know, because at the time I thought it was a privilege to talk to one of the anointed.
Yep.
And, we were talking about, well, did you just hear about, blah, blah, blah. Well, no, why? And then, started to fit, it's like, wait a second. We're taught that the 144,000 are all in agreement. They all know what's going on, but yet here's one that doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Also
the fact the governing body has a voting system, a 2/3 majority voting system. Like, it's like, you're not in unity if you have to have a vote in there. It'd be much more impressive if for every matter the governing body prayed, and then all at the same time after the prayer they say yay or nay to a proposition, and if 100% of the time they always say in unison the same yay or nay, that'd be a little impressive. Like, okay, something might be going on there where every single issue, obviously with no shenanigans of planning beforehand, they say, okay, this is the issue, let's pray on it, and they all pray on it, and then yay, nay. Like, if you could demonstrate, hey, they're in unison every single time after a prayer,
right?
That'd
and even impressive. The ones that are like across country, they wake up at 2:00 in the morning saying, oh, yay,
yay.
I don't know why, but yay, let's vote for yay.
100% unanimous every time. That would be, yeah. That's not what happens though. They have 2/3 majority vote.
Demonstrate quite the opposite.
Because there's just a bunch of schmucks in a conference room trying to hash out.
If you're no longer anointed or going to get removed, like Tony, you just step down because God talked to me. He told me, yep, you're going to get kicked off. Okay, I understand. Jehovah is the one that is directing us to do this. I'll do as he says.
That whole thing, that whole Tony Morris thing was really, really strange. We'll never know the truth of what actually happened, but it's really funny how they had 8 members of the governing body. They bring on 2 more, and then immediately after they bring on those 2 others, they then kick him out.
Right.
So you went from 8 to 10 to 9, and it's like, oh, were they stacking the vote to get him out with those 2 new additions? And it's I wonder what he's up to. I wonder if he's like kind of.
Anytime they remove somebody over the years, it's always been this big conspiracy, or there, doesn't quite seem right for some reason.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of inconsistencies on God's spirit-directed organization, if you ask me.
Yeah. Yep. Pretty much.
But they're not anointed, not inspired, or they're the uninspired prophets of God.
Yeah. Pretty much.
So anytime something goes wrong, it's not their fault; it's God's fault. He didn't communicate it properly. Or Jehovah, excuse me. I have to use his proper name.
The Lord.
The Lord.
Even though the Lord.
Reasoning from not the reasoning book, the other one, Insight to Scriptures, says clearly, even though most scholars believe that Yahweh is the more correct way to pronounce the Tetragrammaton, we're going to go ahead and go with Jehovah because it's so important. So it's like, wow, hypocrisy.
It's one of those things where it's like, it's so established in our faith and our religion that we can't change this, even though, like the 1914 thing, like they're never going to change that, even though.
But we can change the Bible.
But he came back and
he can change the Bible. Yeah, that's no problem. He can't change 1914. Yeah. And the whole and the funny thing with 1914 is that it's based off of an incorrect date of the first destruction of Jerusalem.
Right. 586, and they use 607 or vice versa, whatever it is.
They use 607, I think, but 586 is the actual date.
Right.
Of destruction
586, 587. So their starting point is bad. When you get 5 unrelated scriptures, you toss them in a bowl, you mix them up, and you come up with some sort of, nobody knows, but now we know. You have to question, their prophetic, I guess.
Yeah, I would say that's what Jehovah's Witness is, or I would say that's what they're most famous for. In my world, is incorrect predictions.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
I think between that and the blood, you talk about Jehovah's Witness, and most people say, "Oh yeah, those guys that deny blood transfusions."
Yeah,
bad as many people as that's killing. There's not very many positive aspects to it. In my opinion,
is a standard.
Love bombardment when you start studying, going to meetings, and as soon as there's the next one that steps up, they kind of forget about you. Then they go to that person. Love bombardment. And then just rinse and repeat.
Now, there's actually a lot of other like numerology involved in Jehovah's Witness, isn't there? Like they put a lot of meaning behind different numbers, and that's actually where they got those predictions.
Yeah, the book they use mainly the Book of Daniel and also the Book of Revelation. They have like 2 different systems of numerology. Like they got to 1914 through like this convoluted stuff with the first destruction of Jerusalem, the 70 weeks of years, all this stuff. And then And then also with Revelation, the 144,000 is from a block of text in there saying the 12,000 from the 12 tribes of Israel gets you 144,000. They take that as, okay, these are the anointed. A whole, like, there's like a tiered system of belief in the witnesses, with, you know, the great crowd being everybody who's not anointed, living on paradise earth,
even though they're
144,000 go
standing
to
in front
heaven.
of the throne.
Yeah. It's
Right.
And even without, you know, what is it? Without the days, like 1,000 years to Jesus or to God.
yeah,
I mean, they
that's another
wouldn't
thing
have
too.
the 6,000 year earth. They wouldn't have the reign of Christ for 6,000, and then we're in the last 1,000 years with Jesus. So
So
Yeah.
numerology, and they're really into the occult, especially
Yeah.
when Russell was in charge. I mean, that's where they got the watchtower symbol, which is a pagan symbol in itself.
quick story. My
Nothing
earth and
to
space
you.
science teacher. Yeah, I know this will take. You'll be here till 4 today. The the
Eric won't be.
no, my earth and space science teacher. He tried to give me this whole laid out thing about, well, if God was doing things at the speed of light, that's actually he would experience time slower. So maybe it's when he says that he did it in 6 days, it's
God is
really,
bound by relativity.
yeah, it was what he was trying to tell me. And I was like, and at the
Oh
time
man.
I was in like 10th grade or something. And I was just like, okay, whatever, like, and I went to church at the time. That kind of stuff was just over my head at the moment. And later, whenever I took physics classes and stuff, I was like, I remembered what he said, and I was like, wait a minute, that was all horse shit. He was just making stuff up, and that was my earth and space science teacher, who was one of my best teachers in school, and still.
It goes to show how just because some folks are they're really misled about their religions, and they practice piss poor epistemology and methodologies when it comes to evaluating their religion, doesn't mean that they're idiots. They can be very, 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 effective, genius level in certain areas of their life. But when it comes to their religion, for some reason, that's like a special set of rules, and that's when they start talking like an idiot.
Yeah.
And it's really sad, because like if they just took the rules and the epistemology and the methodologies they use for literally everything else and applied it to their religion honestly and objectively, I would anticipate that many people would drop out of the religion, because they would understand, hey, I don't have the evidence that I need to support this claim.
Yeah.
But problem is, religion, indoctrination, hope, meaning, the need for hope, meaning, and purpose, emotional needs, social ostracization if you leave. Like, there's all kinds of like blockers keeping them from doing that.
It's so weird to watch people that they're like, okay, well, when I take my religion and I apply it to evolution, for example, with the young earth creationists, well, when I take what I believe and apply it in evolution, it says something different. So this thing I believe isn't flawed in any way. Evolution must be wrong. And it's like, it's so weird to watch people whenever they take that step, when you can see them thinking in their head, and then they say, well, no, that thing's wrong. instead of making the connection, oh, maybe I shouldn't, apply ancient ideas to newfound things.
Maybe a book that's 2,000 plus years old shouldn't be used for modern day science and problem solving.
No, that's why you go back 600 or 700 more years and just go with the Old Testament. It's the real truth of God and science.
Well, like for example, and this is something that's been recent on atheist channels. The Ray Comfort and his 10 scientific facts found in the Bible, or 10 ways the Bible's based on science, that I made a video on, and then Aaron Raw made a video on it the other day, and then that weirdo dude that says that whatever, we're not going to get into that, but this is a video that's been something recent, and it's like, anytime somebody says we're going to find science in the Bible, it's like, okay, it's not that kind of book. Let's hear what this is going to be about. And it's always some, like, there's never anything that's like, I can see how you interpret it that way. It's always like, no, that's that's batshit crazy. That's not what science says at all. And the two things, first of all, nor should they be compatible, but they're just not. And it's like when you try to apply this ancient book to modern things, and then I just don't understand how they're so sure of themselves whenever they say, well, I just don't get it. I don't know.
Because they
I
perfectly
don't know
line
how to
up,
really
Joe.
explain
You need
that.
to
It's
open your
more
heart.
of a, huh? What'd you
You need to
say?
open your heart. It's true. It's there.
That's what it
God
is.
wouldn't lie to
No,
us.
I mean, I used to believe, but I didn't have all the information. Nor do I now, but I didn't have enough information to even make that decision when I was a child. You know, I was indoctrinated into that stuff. But for people who have information and access to information, the internet, you know, they should be able to better make decisions. And it's like, just like what you said, you know, as soon as they get into their religion, though, it's like all sense goes out the window.
Yeah.
Because
And
Googling
you know,
yourself is a sin. We know this. The internet is a sin.
Yeah.
It's of this world.
That's one of the huge markers of a cult, and that's why the
Well,
Jehovah's Witnesses, I think, are a
right.
cult, is because they tell you do not seek out contradictory information, reject it, don't even look at it.
yeah,
Somebody
yeah.
somebody hands you a website or a pamphlet that's anti-JW, ignore it. No.
Or just say the word apostasy and they won't go near it. That's their buzzword. But what's funny is how, especially the Jehovah's Witnesses, will apply aspects of like the blood, but then ignore in the same book, you know, where you're not supposed to touch the bedding or sleep with your wife if she's on her period, or just had, you know, the baby for 30 or 60 days, she's considered unclean. But Jehovah's Witnesses have no problem, you know, ignoring those, sleeping with their wives or right next to them, when the Bible clearly says no, using the same reasoning that the blood is the life, and, you know, or makes you clean or unclean.
Yeah.
It's like a Build-A-Bear. You just build your own religion.
Yep. Buffet style religion.
Yep.
Define
your own God into existence, and then
go find out one thing that makes you different than everybody else. You know, at least one thing.
It's such a weird thing to watch, though, and maybe not for other people, but like, I don't know, where just where I live, I guess, is why it's so like strange, because people believe so many crazy things here that it's like,
well, like the Earth is
I mean,
flat.
we have the fucking boat.
We didn't go to the moon. What's crazy about that shit?
Yeah.
They had CGI in 1969. Don't tell me different.
Somebody the other day had said something about because one of my big pet peeves is within recovery, whenever they say, well, it's through the grace of God that I got clean. And I'm like, no, accountability works both ways here. Be accountable for the good things you do, not just the bad. Like, you did that, you got clean. Don't put it on God, because as soon as you do that and then you fuck up, you're gonna, you know, where does that leave you?
Yep.
God works in mysterious ways, right?
Yeah. All the credit, none of the blame goes to God. Yep.
Yeah. It's, I don't know, it has such potential to take you to bad places. And if anybody did this with any other aspect of their life, applied it in the way that believers apply their beliefs, like, they would be called crazy. They, you know, they would be, you know, everybody would think they were nuts.
Yeah, we got to, just as a warning, I think Eric's got to leave in about 10 minutes. You may want to start wrapping
well,
up.
actually, what I was going to do, was I was going to go ahead and wrap up here in the next few minutes. That way he's got a little bit of time between and doesn't have to.
Appreciate that.
Because you know he's going to have to wash his hair, dry it.
Got to go do the whole hair routine again. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't go do
need at least an hour.
I think I've seen the stream that they're talking about. Was that on Nara's channel whenever he came on and was combing his hair, and you guys were giving him shit about it?
Because like here's the thing. So like my hair is really weird. If I don't wet it and gel it, it's just a huge curly mess. And like sometimes it'll like just kind of work out really well, and other times it'll look just disgusting.
Sounds like pubic hair is what you're saying.
Yeah, basically. My hair has a mind of its own. So yeah, so I like a process where I get it wet, I gel it, I let it dry, and like it takes like probably about a good 30 minutes till I get my hair like presentation, right? Like I'm going to be out in public or if I'm going to be like on a stream or something like that. But every once in a while, I'll just be here in my pajamas, not prepared for anything. All of a sudden, it's like, hey, you want to hop on a stream? Or, oh, hey, this open mic over at this channel. I want to hop on. So yeah. So that one night I was hopping on a stream unplanned, and I was like, oh, hold on, let me go comb my hair. And then I was just latched on. Yeah.
Well, but so I say let's just go ahead and wrap the whole thing up here, because I think we went through the motions of what we wanted to talk to, bullshitted about a little. We don't have any, questions, I don't think. I think I threw people off. I do have to say congratulations to Az for 3 months of being a channel member. You made it that long, buddy.
You're putting up with your shit.
Nice.
I'm going to block you next. I don't care. I'm going to start a fight for some reason. Probably me abusing the power of the wrench.
Anytime you see us on though, and you want to come throw in something or whatever, just drop us a line, and you can come on audio only if you don't want us to see your face.
Fine. I'm caring less and less
6
these
o'clock
days.
your time in the morning, but go ahead and jump on. Don't worry about your flap, onesies you wear and your bunny ears.
Just fresh out of
come
bed.
on.
But for you guys that are left watching though, if you don't care, hit the like and subscribe. If you want to help out, there's channel memberships. You don't have to feel like you need to do that, but if you want to, you can.
So Eric,
and
I'm gonna say, just ask, but Eric, what do you have coming up? Your stream, your channel,
Yeah, so
I make sure we get that in.
Yeah, so my channel is Skeptics and Scoundrels. Lately, I've been doing a Wednesday night stream called Stream Epistemology, where right now it's just a pattern of I'm looking at some Christian apologetics videos, responding. If a theist happens to call in, I'll drop everything and bring them on, and we can talk. And then near the end of the stream, just open mic, just anybody can come in and say hi. So that's kind of been the pattern we've established. So I'm doing that every Wednesday. My goal is to do that every Wednesday for the next upcoming few months and see how it goes, and then maybe make some course adjustments from there. But every Wednesday night I have a stream, and I'm trying to put out some pre-made content. It's very difficult because I'm busy and also very lazy. So
and busy combing your hair. We've already established.
Busy combing my hair. Yeah. I'm hopefully gonna have some new fresh content here pretty soon. And that's what I do.
That actually reminded me, I will have a members only stream tomorrow for you guys that are members. Tomorrow at 7 Eastern time, I will do a short, we may go an hour or whatever, and I'm guessing Az is going to join me for that, and we're just going to talk about whatever with the members and stuff. So but Eric, all your stuff is linked in the description, and it's been put up in the chat a few times as we went, but it's for sure in the description. Anybody looking, there it is. Yeah.
And anytime you want to be a guest on Sunday, Eric, you have an open invite, buddy.
Oh,
but
appreciate it.
Yeah. But you can find Eric, his channel Skeptics and Scoundrels there, and they're doing the show on Wednesdays. Be sure to go check that out, and as for the rest of it, I think that's all I got. I'm gonna get out of here. Everybody else good with that? Good. All right. Later.
Thanks, everybody.